Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're doing well. Let's talk a bit about CHRIS EUBANK Jr. Obviously, his victory over Liam Smith was extremely impressive. He totally dominated Smith. Smith was never at the races. That's probably the worst I've seen Smith fight. But at the same time, it's also probably the best I've seen Eubank. So, did they meet in the middle somewhere? Did Smith get old overnight? Did he just not have the ability to take off all that weight that he was talking about? Is that an excuse or is it a reason? Perhaps it's both. But since then, there's been a lot of talk about Eubank inevitably going in with Conor Benn. Now, when this fight was first mentioned, I mean, this is obviously 18 months ago. I don't know, more than that maybe. I thought, well, that's a gimmick fight. I've no interest in it. And I still have absolutely no interest in that fight whatsoever. You can argue whether Ben has been, quote unquote, cleared. I don't think he has. Not really. Not proven to be innocent. But even if they'd fought last year, I'm mystified as to why anyone would want to watch that. You're talking about a guy who's been up at 168. He had that blip against Smith in the first fight. Fair enough. But to be honest with you, you're talking about a 147 guy coming up, what, 2 weights? What are they going to do, fight at 160 now? I can't see Eubank agreeing to any more weight reduction like he did the first time, down to 157, because that would simply be a bridge too far. It's just too much. We saw that with the first Smith fight. After the Smith fight, Eubank said, oh no, the weight had nothing to do with it. Well, he quite clearly did, because he had that aborted Eubank Ben fight. Then he took on Smith and he looked like garbage, you know. And I mean, okay, up to the point in the 4th round where he got knocked out, you know, he was able to do a few things. But you can't say that making weight wrong or taking off too much weight is not a factor in any performance. Clearly, he made the weight right in the second Smith fight, because although he fought at his own pace throughout the whole fight, his output was more considerable than it has been, and he didn't look knackered at the end at all. He looked actually in pretty good shape. He looked like he could have gone many more rounds. Smith was the one that looked weight drained. In fact, he looked, I don't know about shot, but he looked like he was just completely flat, as he put it. But let's say that Ben, who hasn't fought for, I don't know, what is it? It must be getting on for 18 months. I haven't looked at his record to see exactly when he last fought, but he's going to go up 2 weight divisions, fight a middleweight for the first time, and he's going to, you know, Eubank will be battle hardened, he'll be ready. He's just had the fight with Smith, so his confidence, if it wasn't already high, will be as high as it possibly can be. And Ben can, you know, walk with a bit of swagger and talk a bit of braggadocio and all the rest of it, but he's going to be wondering, what's going on? How am I going to look? I haven't fought for so long. I've been inactive. I've now got to go in with CHRIS EUBANK, who's clearly been active. Okay, he was knocked out in that one fight. Was that simply an aberration? All these questions are going to be going through Ben's mind, and he can pretend that it doesn't matter, but he's a very emotional guy, Ben. And if you're an emotional guy, those things will run through your mind, and they will have an effect. Because Ben doesn't strike me as being the type of guy who can control his emotions that well. He probably can to some degree. I mean, he's very much like his father in that sense. Maybe he wants to be like his father, and that's why he is like that way. But his father always sort of ran on emotional energy. And the son, Conor, it just doesn't seem to me to be the type of guy to whom... He doesn't seem cold-blooded. Well, he isn't cold-blooded. He's not the type of guy to whom all those other things will be easily manageable. Whereas Eubank, the one thing he did, well, amongst other things that he proved against Smith in the rematch, is that he mentally is very, very strong. To come back from a bad knockout defeat like that to go straight back into the lion's den. No tune-ups, no nothing, no avoidance. And to do that, regardless of whatever problem Smith had, it shows that Eubank has, you know, that type of, you know, Lennox Lewis. I'm thinking about the rematch with Rockman, that type of cold-bloodedness. But I see that as being again, I get back to this phrase, gimmick fight. I have just no interest in CHRIS EUBANK facing Conor Benn. And the other one that they're talking about is possibly Kell Brook. I mean, Eubank Jr. mentioned these people in his post-fight interview. Who wants to see Eubank Jr. against a retired welterweight who's fought, you know, once at middleweight and got his eye socket busted? These are nothing fights. I say nothing fights. Of course, it's called prize fighting, and the money's there to be made. But do we really want to see that stuff? Really? I personally don't. So, I don't know. Leave your comments below. I think the whole thing it's disappointing. Even when he talks about Golovkin, I mean, Golovkin is way past his best. Golovkin is semi-retired. Who else is there at middleweight? Charlo's disappeared, you know, God knows where he's gone. But anyone better, any top tenor is surely better than a pair of welterweights, one who's retired and a guy who's in his 40s. And of course, it's not a given that Eubank Jr. would beat Golovkin. It isn't a given. Golovkin may have one last great performance in him. You just don't know. Don't forget, he made his debut at 168 against Canelo and went the distance. He didn't do very well. First 8 rounds, he was asleep. But he did some half decent work in the last third of the fight, maybe the last quarter. So that's not going to be a conclusive fight for Eubank. Even if he beats him, it'll be well he was old. I mean, even Liam Smith is a career light middleweight. So when you think about it, take out the first fight. If the rematch had been the first fight, people would say, well, what did you expect? Eubank. A lot of people were picking Eubank to do that in the first fight. I always thought Smith might be able to sort of be a bit crafty and outpoint Eubank. On both occasions, I picked Smith to win on points. But what do you think? What do you think about who do you think Eubank should fight next? And what do you think of all this talk about Benn and Brook and Golovkin? I'm very disappointed in it. But yeah, let me know. Let me know your feelings. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Thank you for your time as always. Leave a like as well. They count them apparently. But if you could subscribe, that would be a big deal. All right, guys and girls. Thank you very much. Bye for now.